Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. And today we are back with one of our very favorite psychologists, Dr. Kristin Carothers. Kristin, it's so great to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too, Sue.
All right. Well, we are going to start on a conversation that we've had all along. And I think there was a little bit of a dream that we all live with, maybe unrealistically, that there's some kind of going back to normal. And maybe is that something that never really happens?
I think one of the things we have to do is know that we went through like a traumatic experience, stressor, like lots of us went through it in different ways. Some people experience like traumatic loss and grief. Some people experience like loss of relationships. Some people experience not being in connection with other people. And so that while there were for others some good things that happened as a result of like the pandemic, there were lots of things that changed. And we all hope that things could go back to quote unquote normal. But I think the thing to remember is that after you've been through like a traumatic stressor, things don't just go back. You are moving forward. You're changed in some way. Your experience is going to change. And so now we kind of have to get used to like the new normal. We may be in school in person sometimes, and we may be virtual sometimes. We might be at work in person sometimes. We might work virtually sometimes, and that's never happened before in history, unless you lived in a city that had like a technology culture. And so I think we just have to know that things are different, and it's going to be an adjustment period.
Yeah, huge one.
Yes.
And I think like it's such a good mind shift to not think about the past and think about what are we creating moving forward, because
Yes.
we're all changed, not just our teenagers. So one of the things, we always ask our parents, what are the things that you're dealing with? And this one is so interesting to me. Like our kids were home, they were spent some of the time isolated, and a lot of activities that your kid might have been deeply loving beforehand, they didn't necessarily get to do during this time. Like if you were in theater, there were no plays happening.
Right.
And if you played a sport and your school wasn't allowing that sport, you didn't get to do that. So some of these kids are not wanting to go back to what they were doing beforehand. And that's
Yeah.
so hard for us as parents,
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
not only because like you enjoy your kid participating in that, but
Yeah.
also it's a life you have around it, right?
Right, right. I think that's a good point. I think one or two things could be happening here. There could be a thing happening where the kid really was a little bit done with the sport or activity, or it wasn't their passion or something that they were really interested in before the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic hit and they weren't able to engage. And so now it's kind of like, I've disengaged. I'm glad about disengaging. I can move on. On the other side, there's something that's a symptom of depression, which is called anhedonia, and that's loss of interest or pleasure in activities that were once pleasurable. And so I think it's really important to try to figure out for your teen what's going on. Is this like a little bit of a depressive phase where their mood has been low? They're having a little bit of anxiety about re-engaging socially with members of the team? Are they concerned about their ability to perform? Do they just not have any motivation to engage? If that's the case, it might be that they're maybe experiencing a little bit of a depressive phase, and this is a symptom, and they need to kind of be pushed gently to go back to the sport. On the other hand, if you know that you were more involved in the sport than your teen was, or you got more excited about games or the parent responsibilities as part of the team, and you like the coach, but your team didn't really care for the coach, then I think it's important to kind of take a step back and say, wait, how much did my teen enjoy this activity before the pandemic? Was I forcing them to go? Yeah, they're really good at it, but did they enjoy it? On the other hand, if you know your teen enjoyed the activity and now they're giving you pushback, that could be a little bit of social anxiety about re-engaging. It could be a little bit of anhedonia linked to depression.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to invite people to put comments in if you have any questions for Dr. Carothers, but I want to two-part this response. So
Yes.
one is I know the motivation is mine because
Mm-hmm.
I'm so invested in this, but I still want to do this. And the
Right.
other is that I think my kid still has something underneath there. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
still It's just the maybe the distance from it, and for the reasons you gave. So for either of those reasons, I, as a parent, am asking you, how do I find the magic for my kid, help them find the magic without nagging?
First, you got to have an open conversation with your kid, your teen, so that they can tell you honestly what their experience is like. And this conversation may be difficult. It might take a few different stabs at it. You might not get everything that you're looking for the first time, but it's really important to have like more of a democratic approach to this. And so to say, I know, I hear you. You validating their emotion, validating their feeling. You're not interested in this anymore. Then presenting your concerns. I'm concerned because you're really good at it. And I think that it's something that would be a really great hobby for you in the future. And so I want us to talk about how we can make it doable, right? And so that's the compromise. It may be that they don't want to play on the traveling team and the school team. Perhaps it's just, I'm going to only do the school team, or I'm only going to do the travel team. If it's theater, perhaps they get to choose a different company that they want to work with. Maybe they're not interested in doing it at school, but they might be interested in doing it at the local community college that has a program. And so compromise and figuring out different ways to do what was done before. So this is an opportunity to build on an experience and to do something new. We don't have to go back to doing it the same way we did it before. We can engage in it in a different way.
Okay, well, first I want to thank Lori, because I'm always so grateful when someone comments or asks a question, and Lori's always there. So good question, Sue. Find that magic is certainly hard to do some days.
Hi, Lori.
And then I want to comment on your idea of it being a democracy, and that it has to be both people having the conversation, not top down, right? Like,
right.
That's probably not going to go well.
No, not going to go well. I know when I was in high school, my mother's rule was that I had to do one activity a quarter. Really, for her, preferably it was a sport. And so every quarter I had to be engaged in some activity, and I wasn't allowed to sit out. And so I did some stuff I didn't like, and that builds character, because you're not going to like everything. And I think it's really important that we as parents also teach our children and teens to kind of persevere. Everything won't always go your way. Everything won't be super exciting. And we live in a time where we're really highly reinforced by like our social media, and everything is funny and everything is engaging. And sometimes things aren't that engaging. And so if you can stay the course through something that maybe isn't your most fun thing in the world, you still have gotten the exposure. Maybe you pick up a friend, maybe you pick up an experience, right? And so the way to think about this is not forever. We're not saying this has to be your career. This is about exposure. This is about engaging in an activity.
So do you think it's reasonable for a parent to say to their kid what your mom said, which is, I want you to do something. I don't care what it is, but I want you to do something?
I think it's very important. We are coming out of a time when a lot of kids have been isolated because they haven't been able to go to school. Some kids experienced social anxiety before the pandemic, and they have struggled with approaching social situations. Having the structure of an activity almost gives you kind of a fail-safe for that. So yes, you're nervous, but there are other people who are coming here who are nervous, who might be new to the activity. I'm not just telling you to walk up to a random group of kids. These are kids who are doing this with, towards the same purpose. So I do think it's important.
Okay. And because I have to share this, it's so great. My son asked me yesterday if we can go to Dave and Buster's for lunch. He wants to play the dance machine. Guess what we're doing today? Finding the magic.
Magic. I love it.
That's great,
Dave
Lori.
and Buster's has really good food.
I haven't been there in so long. I'd like to go there. I used to love that. Yeah. I think maybe more than my kids even. Okay. So if for parents who were able to be home and their kids had a lot of extra attention that they wouldn't have, so the kids are not in school and the parents are not at work, the dynamic changed dramatically in those houses. How do we help our kids regain like their autonomy and sense of independence? Because when you're in each other's space, you're bound to be more over them, right? So how do we go not even back, but forward in giving them the freedom they need?
I think we have to take baby steps. So we've been through over a year and a half of this. of kind of being around each other and stuff. I think some states open sooner than others. And so some parents might have had their kids back out and engaged in more independent activities. I think as a parent, you need to do an assessment of where you've noticed that you've overstepped, or where you notice that you've been given more support, where those boundaries have kind of gotten diffused and you find yourself doing things for people that they can do for themselves. So first, it starts with you. What are you doing? Where do you need to pull back? So I have a young child, but I got feedback that at camp, he's the last person to get dressed after swimming. So my thought was, during the pandemic, you probably have been putting his clothes on for him rather than having him put clothes on himself. And so he's gotten rusty and slow with that. Right now, this is a baby example. For teenagers, though, I'm in a household right now with a teenager who has like a virtual internship. And what he's been able to do in the pandemic is wait until the last second to jump on that class. And so then it's like you're doing more reminders for the child to wake up and to get on class, when before this is a kid who's up at 5 o'clock in the morning, out the door on the bus by 5:45 independently, right? So there are lots of ways that we kind of have supported each other because this was a strange time. And now we just have to kind of taper it back just a little bit, or have a 2-week period, I think, before school starts, when you say, okay, this is when I'm pulling back and you've got to get some things done for yourself because I need you to be ready. 2 weeks might be a long time because some parents or families are traveling, but at least 1 week before the year starts, try to start those routines again.
And I just love your voice, because there's no judgment in this. No one did anything in the last year and a half to be bad, or to be, reprimanded.
We adapted.
Right. And now we've got to adapt again.
Yep.
And figure out how to let that kid get up in the morning by themselves. Yes. And get on the bus on time. So, okay. Camp is this like little bit of a laboratory for kids, and they're so intense. And sadly, we are hearing that parents are having to pick up teenagers who are suffering from severe anxiety. Now, we know that was going on during COVID anyway, but maybe the opening up has helped some kids, but not all kids.
Definitely. And I don't think this is something that like camp directors or programmers foresaw. I know that it's happening in some of my colleagues' clinical practice. I'll say two things. One is that it is highly cultural. I'm Black, and most of the people that I was raised with or that I grew up with and that I know now didn't go to sleepaway camp and didn't send their kids to sleepaway camp. And so I was on a consultation team meeting where one of my colleagues, who is white and who's the kid that was being picked up or was at camp, was white. And he said, well, what do I do to tell the parents? My first instinct was like, go get him. What? I don't know why he's got to be at sleepaway camp. he needs to be at home. He doesn't want to be there. But my other colleague is like, Kristin, clinical psychologist, like, you're reinforcing anxiety if you go to get him. He's not going to die. He's uncomfortable, but we've had a whole year where he hasn't been around other people in this context. He's been with his family and his friends, and he doesn't want to go, but we need him to stick it out. The parents can go visit. The parents can maybe have a few more calls. The parents can ask the counselors to do more work with him, but really we need him to stick it through and to see, as long as there's not any like physically dangerous thing happening, that he can make it through. So we don't want to reinforce anxiety by bringing them home. I think in retrospect, if there was something that we could have done as parents and as people who run camps, it would have been to say, okay, we know this is a lot of teenagers' first times being out of their homes. We're going to make sure that we have like specific like coping skills instruction or specific like check-in times about being homesick and what it's like to be away, and helping them to connect with other people who are feeling similarly, helping them to connect with people who are really enjoying the experience, so that they can know that they have some support there and they don't have to go home to get the support. They don't have to escape. They can stay and enjoy it. And so I think this is it's a weird summer, and it's almost over in some places, and it's right at the midpoint for others. And so just be gracious and kind of prep your kids for the fact that they might feel this way, and it's normal.
And in terms of like thinking about school in the fall, and that teachers are going to have such a huge responsibility. It's going to be so daunting to get these kids in who don't remember how to work collaboratively and just have so much of what they used to do before. How do we help them? I mean, we should see ourselves as partners with the teachers And what do we do now? It's mid-July. Is there anything we can do to kind of prep those kids?
I don't know. I think this might be a trust the process answer. And trust the process is not easy, but it's kind of like like jumping into the pool. We got to let them kind of figure it out. We can give some feedback and maybe try to increase their exposure to like social interactions at home. But once they get back into school, my hope is that teachers will start to work on, okay, we're going to start this group project. Okay, well, the coaches are saying, hey, we've been apart for a while, but we're going to work together. And then reinforcing every time we see kids like working together and doing things together. It's just hard because the pandemic, what was it? Alone together was the motto we had at first in the pandemic, alone together. But some people didn't feel alone together. They felt alone. And so now we have to go into, and when you're alone, you do what you want. You eat what you want. You wake up when you want. You talk to who you want to talk to. Exactly. Those things, excuse me. But now when we're going back into social situations, I think they'll probably have to give more direct reminders like, this is the way you speak to people. You got to wait your turn. Even for teenagers, I think it's adults going back into workplaces, like social etiquette. We're going to have to remember, don't touch other people's things that are in the refrigerator, or make sure you say good morning to your colleagues when they come through the door. And so for all of us, we're going to be relearning that social etiquette piece that we may have lost because we weren't together. So I think trust the process, and we'll just have to see what happens.
Man, I'm so not a trust the process.
Yes.
Okay. My last question for you is, what else are you seeing in your practice and hearing from other therapists?
What I'm seeing in my practice is mixed feelings about returning to school. Most teens who don't suffer from like extreme social anxiety are ready for interactions with their classmates. But this is where I think by the end of the year, they were burnt out. They were totally done. And so I'm working with people in different states. And in some states that were open, those teens weren't feeling burnt out by the process. But in states that were not open, where people maybe didn't get to school until the last week of school just to turn in books, or the last 2 weeks, they might have gotten to go in for 3 days a week. They were exhausted and done. And so I think we're at different points in the summer. Like I said, Georgia's school starts back like August 3rd, August 10th. Oh yeah. August 3rd is when my family starts back. Illinois, New York, September, right? So we have some kids who have basically 2 weeks left. We've got other kids who've got a whole nother month left. And the issues are different. But I think this transition back to school, back to public transportation, back to the bus, back to the routine is going to be something that's a little bit of a rocky road for us. And kids feel it too. Teenagers feel it too.
For sure. Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Kristin Carothers, once again for being here with us. And good luck to all of us, because it's going to be a journey.
Yes. Good luck to us.
Thanks.
Thank you.